guys, welcome back. I'm Christina Ray, 1/3 of the Fangirls React channel. So today we are kind of breaking down the astrology chart of Cortis, and if you haven't been living under a rock, you know who Cortis is. It's the most recent rookie group from Big Hit Music Entertainment, and yeah, I mean they've been taking the world by storm, and so I mean I enjoy them. I really like them. Honestly, they were my first boy group uh that I'm like an old stay, like that was my only group that I listened to with Stray Kids. That was like my path. What is it? Your gateway drug? Through for K-pop, and I had never like bought another album, and I was like, "Oh my god, I love this album. I need to support them." And that is the second boy group album that I purchased. So that's a lot. That says a lot. Anyways, um, so if you're new here, welcome. And I just do pretty much like breakdowns of the astrology chart of K-pop groups. Sometimes I do comebacks as well. I already kind of did that with Stray Kids and a girl set. I kind of used their debut chart. For girls that I used their rebrand chart and then added the comeback on top of it. Same thing with Stray Kids debut chart, and then I added their duet comeback chart as well. I kind of did that with Karma too, but I wasn't doing this. That's kind of on TikTok if you guys want to check it out. But um one of the things that I mean, you can tell immediately from Cortis is that they are such a magnetic group. And again, like I said, they're taking the world by storm, the K-pop world by storm, and so it does really. I feel like it reflects a lot on the astrology chart, and so it can kind of give us an insight as to what this group is all about. And yeah, I hope that's all for the intro. Let's just get into it. If I remember something, I will bring it up. All right, so first off, I want to point out, and I always start with the first house right here, because that's where the ascendant is. And they have in Aquarius ascendant, and they have it in the um first house in Aquarius. Wow, I'm blanking out. And one of the things that if you're like new to astrology, the rising sign really or the ascendant is the zodiac degree that is rising in the eastern horizon. I hope that makes sense. Where you are born. Here I have August 18, 2025 at 6 p.m. in Korea. This is where they debuted it. In regards to their digital single of What You Want. Now, the reason why I'm not taking into consideration the September date of their whole album is because this came out first. This date gave us an exact vibe of what we were supposed to be expecting them as a group. I kind of wish I would have known about this before. I could have probably predicted the vibe of this group, but for sure, like because it is the first um energetic blueprint that they put out in the world as a group, that's why this is their debut chart and not the release of their EP. The EP as a whole, I could put it over this chart, but I mean, we'll just start here. So again, they have 0 degrees. Now, for it to be at 0 degrees of Aquarius, that is very rare. That is a very, very rare in the first place. And so not only that, they also have the Aquarius energy that is like very futuristic, very fresh, um unpredictable, but also kind of like this sort of rebelliousness to them. um think of it like if you, let's say you have a friend who is always on top of the trends, like they know what trends are coming, that type of vibe, right? And because it's sitting there at 0 degrees, like there's this rawness, this potential that is like very almost childlike, but not in the sense of like, oh, you're naive or you're so kid like, nothing like that. It's just, when you, as a kid, you're just like exploring things. And maybe I'm saying this because I'm a mom, but um when you're a child, you don't have this notion of like, oh, this might be dangerous. Oh, this might harm me. No, you're just constantly exploring and stuff like that. And it kind of gives that energy. Like I tell my child, I'm like, you have no regards for your life. Like you put your hand in there without knowing if it's going to be good or bad. You just are exploring, right? And so it's kind of like that energy of like just pure potential. And there's no like copy paste to them really. I feel like with them as a group, Big Kid really took like a chance on them, which I'm kind of glad to see in the K-pop industry, of like bigger companies, or like companies that have like carry weight, that have been doing almost like the same thing throughout the years, to finally be like, oh, let's kind of shift things a little bit, right? Let's kind of think like the times in a sense. And I feel like they did really well with Cortis, and the members that they picked. Now, if you add Pluto, which is this symbol right here, is at 2 degrees. That still, to me, is considered a conjunction. Now, Pluto can bring a lot of intensity, but it can also bring a lot of magnetism. And so it's kind of like when, a group walks into the room and everyone just like can feel that like aura, right? And so Cortis kind of, yes, gives you main character energy from the get-go. It's just written all over them. So that's why Pluto explains why their growth happened really fast as well. Because for a rookie group, this is like a success story for Big Hit, in the sense of like, they debuted, they had amazing feedback, and people are drawn to them, and it just happened like that, right? So they do have that like main character energy. People are deeply like drawn to them, and so it's that kind of fame that can go both ways, really. So it's kind of like a sword, double edged. Does that make sense? I don't know. A double edged sword. Wow, that took, see. I be messing. English is not my first language, guys. Okay, just FYI. Bear with me. It's my second language. Anyways, so it is a double-edged sword, and so it's something that I feel like, well, obviously, and as we're seeing in real time, kind of brings this level like of obsession. And that's something that I hope that they are able to navigate very carefully, and that they are provided, um resources to kind of navigate fame this quickly. But the whole brand of it itself is very like forward thinking, very futuristic, in the sense that I'm not talking about, like, we're gonna see them doing some cyberpunk stuff. That's not what I'm saying when I say futuristic. When I say futuristic, or like they have this foresight, they kind of like create the trend, if that makes sense. So like, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if companies, after Cortis's debuted, are scrambling and saying, okay, how can we use like the Cortis formula and create a group matching that energy? Not copy, but, still kind of pick something from the Book of Cortis, if that makes sense. Now, that's just like the initial energy. It's like magnetic, it's forward thinking, it's ahead of the trends. It's a little bit rebellious, and it kind of you can kind of tell that with their like aesthetics as well. So, it's just one of those things where it's like they have this sense of like fashionista type of aesthetic to them, and rebelness to the whole look that they have. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, next up that I wanted to talk is obviously the opposite sign, which is usually, sorry, my phone is pinging. Um the opposite sign, which is the seventh house, and it's going to be in the sign of Leo. Now, they have a Leo sun and Mercury in the seventh house. And so this is kind of where it gets a little bit cool. Like you can see that not only the sun and Mercury are in Leo, they are in the house of relationship, which means that they shine through connection. And I feel like that's very on point and on brand because obviously I haven't gone to any of their stuff, but you can kind of tell even when they perform, the way that they interact with the fans, it feels even personal. I think we've seen enough like behind the scene, or like not behind the scene, but clips of them doing, the fan meets and stuff like that, and they kind of get very personal with you. And one of the things that I also noticed was, I think during one of the interviews, they were talking about how they're like just weird and quirky. But even though that may be true, and I can definitely see that on the chart, once they are on stage, it's this, they kind of sink in that Leoness performance aura. Like it's pure charismatic energy. And so that's Leo, right? It's confident, it's passionate, but it's also very warm. And they have this way of making like the audience feel like they're part of their story, and they're not just watching them, they're really like trying to make sure that it's a constant like energy exchange, if that makes sense. um because I mean, even in interviews or live streams, you can kind of feel that there's a genuine spark from this group, and it's just really like who they are, um to their core as a group. Now, another thing that I kind of wanted to point out is um this moon Uranus in the fifth house of creativity. So what I like about this is that their moon is in Gemini, which the moon, even if it's in of itself as a planet, we consider it a planet in astrology, is that it rules our emotions and our creative like instinct. So with it being in Gemini and Uranus, even though it's not like conjunct, it is still sitting in the same house, and it kind of adds like that Uranian spark that um that Uranus as a planet will bring. And so it kind of combines those two energies, and just think of it as like restless creativity, constantly like, being in the studio recording, thinking of this new beat, they're constantly as a group trying to like sort out this restlessness that they have to like constantly create, especially in the fifth house of creativity. Is just there always. It's constant noise, and I don't say it in like a bad way, because I have Gemini moon and my brain is always like buzzing. And like with Uranus, I can only imagine as a group dynamic. It's like, oh my god, let's try this. Oh my god, let's do this. Why don't we do that? And it's just this constant restlessness, like I said, in creativity. So again, it's not conjunct, but it does live in the fifth house of creativity, and so this really influences how the group will create more music and more stuff, and how they will perform overall. So they're not going to be the type of group that um at least, right, because it looks like they have a little bit of creative freedom of like trying to repeat the same thing. So I feel like next comeback will still get something very much new, because that energy of like moon Uranus in the fifth house gives me, we're not here to do like the same thing twice, if that makes sense. Um, so in a way, that also kind of leans into how this debuted for this group might have felt something experimental, but also still very cohesive when it comes to the formation of this group and how well it has been received. But again, with this energy is constant play, constant remixing, trying new things. And so it works in their favor, because they have, kind of like I was saying, with their with that childlike aura. It's not childlike in the sense of like you're naive. It's childlike in the sense of curiosity, that one has when you're a kid and you don't have a perception of like, this is good, this is bad. You're just constantly, being a little curious George, right? And so that leads to your brain creating all these, connections and neurons and stuff like that. And so, what is it? Neurological? Oh my God. Y'all know what I'm saying, like new neurons, pathways, and stuff like that. So, and out of that's why they tell you like the kids should be bored, because out of boredom comes innovation, right? So you didn't know freaking X could lead to Z because you didn't know Y existed, but because of your curiosity, you found Y, and then you mix X, Y, and then it created Z, something like that. That's the way that my brain is like trying to process it. But it also kind of gives you, at least personally to me, that nostalgic feeling of like early 2000s creativity, if that makes sense. So when people would just like grab like a camcorder and film those like family or style home videos and just make something fun, right? And I mean, you can even like link it to when Vine was a thing. People were popping off on Vine, but it was because it was something where you could like be creative, quirky, and funny in yourself. And so it kind of brings that nostalgic feeling of earlier eras. At least for me, this is what I link it to. And so I feel with when they did the Go version, like the earlier version, and Lullaby, kind of shooting those in like iPhone and from like their own POVs, and really reeling it into that real moment um that the Y2K era, early 2000s, when we were in this like odd place with technology where like every year something new was coming out, like more technological advances were coming out, but it was still pretty like new. That's what they give. And honestly, that's like Gemini fifth house all day long, just experimenting just because it feels right to them, is that Gemini Uranus moon in the fifth house. So, but to add to that, right, I wanted to touch upon this Venus Jupiter um signature, I want to say, right? So not only does the Uranus Gemini moon in the fifth house kind of give that nostalgic, experimental side that was a lot of our childhood, at least for myself, but with Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, this is kind of where you see their heart. This is kind of where you see that like under surface level like passion, if that makes sense. So Venus and Jupiter, sorry, together they create warmth and like this emotional connection. And in Cancer, it's all about sincerity, loyalty, and comfort. Now you can feel it in the way that they talk about each other. It's like we're in this together. Um and because it is in the sixth house of effort and their daily routine and their daily work, you really see that side of them that is like, hey, we do really care about what we do. And so again, they're the type to be the group that stays up hella late just perfecting a track, not because they have to, but it because it matters to them that it is as authentic as possible to them. That's why like their music feels very nostalgic, feels very homely, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Like it feels like home is what I'm trying to say. There's, like I said, there's something nostalgic to it. And not only is that curiosity, that camcorder energy that, Uranus and Gemini moon brings, but Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, that signature, and I've been talking a lot about before I really started diving deep into the K-pop astrology charts, that we are living in a time where the Y2K aesthetic is trying to make a comeback. And we see that every year. Every other year, fashion is like, oh my God, is Y2K back? But I don't necessarily believe that the fashion sticks right away, because the backbone of the Y2K era is now being implemented as well. But I'm trying to do some astrology research um into it a little bit more, but I personally feel that they are the Y2K era had certain astrological placements, and if you guys want me to talk about that a little bit more, I can. But for the sake of this video and the Cortis breakdown, this is what I'm gonna say. Y2K era had certain elements, certain signs, or certain planets in certain signs. This time around, it's almost the same energy, just a little bit flipped. And so because it has sort of like this similar signature of the Y2K era, a lot, and I feel like because of the state that the world is in right now, it is so divided, it is so chaotic. Sometimes we come back to like music to kind of, you know, find a sense of purpose and community. And I feel like K-pop does a really good job at like creating community with the fandom. And so in this day and age, we are constantly trying to find comfort and community with people in a time where we live in a digital era where we have become very distant with one another. You know, we don't talk on the phone as much because we're scrolling on TikTok. We don't talk on the phone too much because we rather text or, stuff like that that keeps us constantly like pushing community and people surrounding us away. And so with the markers of like Jupiter and Venus, it kind of gives that throwback of like simpler times before everything was like overproduced, went digital. And because Venus is a sign of love and Jupiter is a sign of expansion, not only Jupiter is finds itself super comfortable in the sign of Cancer, having Venus Cancer can also have like add that emotional uh layer to a planet that represents like love and sweet things and beautiful things. And so all that energy together kind of makes people feel good. And it kind of gives you like this familiar, emotional, real feeling. And that's why I feel like is what makes Cortis so magnetizing in a sense. Not only, yes, they are a very magnetizing group. We saw that with that 0 degree in Aquarius ascendant with Pluto there, but they also make you feel good. It's a group that makes you like feel like, oh my god, I can chill with this music, and I feel like there's this sense of comfortness, especially with the tracks like Joyride and Lullaby, and even What You Want feel very nostalgic in a sense and just like feel good energy. I hope I'm making sense, guys. I hope I like to just yap and be sort of philosophical with things, but in my head it makes sense. Okay, in my head it makes sense. All right. So now we're moving to Mars. Mars is in the ninth house in Libra. And what can Libra and Mars tell us? Mars in Libra is not where it likes to be. It's in the opposite sign. Um, Mars doesn't like being in the sign of Libra, but when a planet is in a very uncomfortable place or house or whatever, how you want to imagine it, it has the ability to not cry and say boohoo, boohoo, I'm not in my house. It has the ability of turning challenges into art. So they don't try to fight chaos with chaos, if that makes sense. They use creativity and the aesthetics to make a point. And I feel like that was kind of like what we saw even with the track fashion in the music video. They they use that aesthetic that is very them to their core. New fandom name, guys. We finally have one core. Um, it's they use that creativity and aesthetics to really make a point, as a group and in their music to kind of mesh those in a way that fits. And now it is in the house, in the ninth house, which rules travel, philosophy, higher education, um publishing, if you want to add that in there, but in global influence too. But it does, to me personally, show a group that is also, especially because Mars is there and Mars likes to kind of like go go go, that they are meant for an international stage. And not only because Mars is there, but I feel like with the kind of points that it does make, that, and I will kind of go over these a little bit more. I'm just trying to kind of break down the placements little by little so you get the overall energy of the group, is that there are thinkers just as much as they are performers. And you can see this with them, especially being sent to the States to do like the songwriting camps, and which is something that like not a lot of groups have the opportunity to, or at least didn't in the past. And so with that, Mars and Libra also kind of allows them to kind of like beautifully like collaborate and blend different worlds and perspectives, because it is in the ninth house. But even though Mars is not comfortable in Libra, Mars has to find a way to kind of like make everything balance, make everything cohesive, right? Because that is the archetype of Libra. And so in the ninth house, it kind of also blends different like perspectives and even like world views or like influences and stuff like that. So in the long run, this group could easily build like a global fan base that's not just because of the visuals or choreography, but because there's actually this more deeper meaning behind their art. Because I feel like sometimes with K-pop, it's a very like very first house, and when I say first house, it's very exterior. Like sometimes you get into a group because maybe one of them is hot or something like that. Or this guy's cute or this girl's hot or whatnot. And sometimes I feel like that can be the case for some people that come into certain fandoms and stuff like that. So it can be very like external or exterior wise, but for whatever reason you became a Cortis fan, they do have like this capability of like bringing in people internationally because of what they're doing with their art, with their music, is what I'm trying to say. So it's not just for superficial stuff. It's mainly because like they have this signature that, you know, will reel in more and more international fans because of the way that they are with their art and the meaning behind it. Now MC is the highest point of your chart, and usually it'll fall in the 10th house, in the 9th, or in the 11th, but usually in the 10th house, and it is in the sign of Scorpio. Now, Scorpio, it's a sign that's already deep. And the midheaven also, just the angle of it, represents our public image and our long-term legacy. And for them, it is in Scorpio, which is the sign of like transformation, depth, and emotional honesty. So Cortis isn't really the kind of group that you'll figure out right away. They might make you think you've figured them out. But as I as we I don't know what I say, as we um learn more about them as time goes on, we will start to see the layers that they want to uncover first. So they have a lot, I feel like, that they want to do as a group, and a lot of parts of themselves that they really want to show as a group. But there's also a lot of ways to go about it. And so they have to make sure that they're doing it in a way that they are comfortable with, and of course the company. But each comeback, just like I said, I'm pretty sure they're not the group that they're gonna do the same thing twice. So with each comeback, it's gonna be a different layer. They're gonna show a different side. So Just keep that in mind. Now, Lilith is right up there with Scorpio. So this is one of the things that I kind of was like, ooh, okay. Because it is in the 10th house of like your legacy, your career, and stuff like that, and how you show up to the world. There is a sense of like attracting this intensity from the public. So it's not like, oh, we like Cortis. No, this can bring about the fixation for the group. And I mean, I feel like we've already kind of have seen those things with like I don't think, I think it was them going to Korea, if I'm not mistaken, but how they were like flooded with a bunch of people at the airport and, you know, um, just like the crowd at the airports, that intensity, that fixation for the group, it can come with that placement. Because again, Scorpio has this like magnetic but like heaviness to that to that magnet. It kind of gives them power but also responsibility. And so it's about them really learning how to handle being like a projection of people's feelings. And I feel like that's, in a way, if they are able to kind of work with that, with that heaviness that comes with being perceived a certain way, it will only make their story a lot more powerful over time. But all right, so that's kind of like one of the major placements that I kind of wanted to touch base upon. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about as far as uh angles is this signature here of Uranus trining Pluto retrograde in the first. So this really gives me like that futuristic signature, if that makes sense. So Uranus is in Gemini, and so it connects perfectly with Pluto and Aquarius, which, combining those two energies, is innovation is at the root of this group. So um like I said, very futuristic, very forward thinking. So in a sense, I don't want you guys thinking that I'm trying to bring AI or anything artificial into the topic of Cortis, but I feel like they are a group that will use technology to their advantage, creatively, if that makes sense. So just to kind of give you where my head is going. Um so you know how when they first came out with their album, the whole Singing Bowl was an album version. So something like that. When I say like something unexpected, unexpected but meaningful. Oh my god. Yeah, something unexpected but meaningful. And in a way, they're kind of like creating also like these tactile but almost like collectible moments. And I think the most recent weird version that I saw was like this fuzzy ball. Um it's weird, it's unique, but it's totally on brand for them, for a group that kind of like likes to, say like, hey, we're quirky. So in a sense, they are the type of group that will blur the line between technology and feeling, but also keeping the art very human, even in the digital space that we live in. So again, it's innovation, it's technology, and it's being able to create something innovative. But again, when I say innovated, yes, I want to throw technology in there, but I don't want you guys thinking I'm trying to throw AI in there, but it's it's being able to take the parts of like technology that, and usually this, I feel like this would be more like on the marketing side for their team Cortis, but being able to do things differently in the tech world, um that they would, I'm trying to think of how I want to say this, that is going to, yes, help them, but in a way make them seem stand out. is what I want to say. Good God. Yes, something like that. um but yes, so it's a way of being able to use that to their advantage when it comes to their art. Now, the other thing is this North Node in the second house of Pisces. So I like to kind of look at the North Node because it kind of gives me like the purpose that they're moving with. And um Pisces is a very empathetic, emotional sign, and it can also like try to bring about connection. So because even though they are like so like ahead of their time right now, I feel as artists, their main goal is not to be perfect, if that makes sense. It's more about meaning and how that ties into their values as Cortis. So pretty much like what they stand for as a group, because I feel like they're building something for fans that can make the fandom feel good being part of their story. So even though there's a lot of hype surrounding the group, and like I'm pretty sure by now all these like hopes and dreams about this group, they're still very much heart and passion in there, but not to prove that they're the best or anything like that, but to prove that everything that they're doing has meaning. That the reason why they're doing picking certain songs have meaning. Um and a lot of it is about showing also like I guess their more softer, vulnerable side, and just sincerity, right? Still belonging in pop culture, and I feel like that's really powerful for them. Maybe it's not something that we're going to see right away, but something that will slowly start to, because they're still young kids. So, you know, sometimes our priorities are like a little bit messed up when we're young. But we learn about them. We learn. But I feel like at the end of the day, the purpose of this group is really to show what they stand for. I hope that makes sense. Um but that's kind of like the overall energy that this group gives me, that I kind of wanted to break down. And so if I were to kind of give you two things to kind of go with it, that kind of is like the manifesto of this birth chart, is innovation with feeling and creativity with purpose, really. So the Cortis really does have like this blend of Aquarius originality, but it does have Leo warmth, Gemini's curiosity, and Cancer's heart. And that combination hits very differently. And so I feel like that is one of the reasons why they really stand out. They don't have to try and be different, it just kind of happens naturally to them. Um, and their music just feels like this honest reflection of the times that we're in, right? It's smart, emotional, but it's also very real. And even though they are like going places already, it still kind of gives you like the slow burn legend energy. So it's not that they explode it once and then it's gonna start fading. They are constantly going to try and evolve themselves. Like I said, that Gemini Uranus signature in the fifth house of creativity, and the fact that they have this like liberty to create their own music, it is just, every comeback is gonna feel like more intentional, more mature as artists, and more them. Um, these are kids that are gonna be growing in real time, that we're gonna see growing. The fandom is only gonna grow with them, but give it a few more years. Obviously, they'll move past the rookie status, but um, they I feel like this is going to, if not already, is a group that has shown extreme like potential, um, and will kind of become, if not already, the standard that everyone like will be measured against, if that makes sense. But pretty much the astrology shows why like everybody loves them. It feels so genuine. You know, they're not just idols to watch. They're actually like artists that make you feel something. And so I generally am excited for what's to come next, musically. And yeah, that kind of gives me, this is like just the vibe that their chart gave me. It really shows a group that is just constantly going to want to, oh my god, my legs, not want to stay stagnant. You know, like I said, they're always going to try and do something different, and they are the type of group that can think like that. Very innovative, very curious about life and about things, and you know, artistry and how to work. And so because they have this curiosity to art, they're being allowed like this huge playground to play in, we're just only going to see more, I feel like, more bangers, more good things about it. But that is the overall energy for Cortis's debut chart. And please let me know what you think. I know I can yap a lot, and sometimes I be saying shit that only makes sense here and now when I say it. So hopefully hopefully you guys got what I said. Please let me know if there's another group that you guys would want me to break down. I have a list. I kind of have to go back to it, because I've been putting Cortis on the back burner for a while now because I was prioritizing other groups. But I wanted to get this out there before we get that next comeback, because I know it's coming. But once that does come out, when and at what time it's going to happen, then we can apply it to this chart and kind of predict what the feeling or the vibes are for the next comeback. But thank you so much for staying this long, and yeah, I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.
Without the makeup and stuff.
아닌가? 아.
Yeah.
It's so weird to see him without his long hair.
Yeah.
이게
He
He looks a lot younger without the blonde.
I think that's what I love about like Martin.
Not the toes
is, like,
being out.
the change in tone. They're all very special in
Yeah.
their own way.
when they were showing